Alright, what's going on guys? It's Almond. Welcome back to another Wizard101 video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how life is actually getting a nerf in Wallaroo, which I'm kind of disappointed out. Due to the fact that there is some tech with life that is kind of viable when it comes to advanced combat, and that is going to kind of shred that due to the fact with the life changes that are coming into Wizard101. So we'll talk a little bit more about that and how life is actually going to be changed in the near future, and give you guys my opinion on this, because I feel like a lot of PvP players have their own input and no one from PvE is really talking about this, and I definitely want to give you guys my input when it comes to this. So let's talk about it, right? If you do enjoy this type of content, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, all that type of stuff. So let's talk about what's actually getting changed. So Pigy is getting changed again, right? I think Pigy, they just keep touching Pigy, right? There hasn't been a moment where they just won't let Pigy just stay for like 2 updates. Pigy has been changed like multiple times within this past couple months, and it's actually absurd, right? They can't make up their mind on Pigy, and it's mainly because of the fact of how OP it is, right? When Pigy initially came out, it was busted, right? And over time, it's been going through some changes. Now we have like advanced combat, and it's definitely going to be changing how that works too. So let's talk about when it comes to that Pigy, right? Pigy is definitely getting changed, so it has limitations now, so you can't reshuffle your Pigsies back into your deck. It's going to have limitations where you can only have a certain amount of copies in your deck. So judging by the image that Ratbeard teased in his stream, is that you have limitations of 4, right? This could just be with his deck, and you know, he just has a deck where he only has 4 copies, but from what it seems like, it has a ×1 multiplier next to it, or like an x1, meaning you can only have 1 copy of that, right? So if I have, for example, 4 Pigsies and I use a reshuffle, I can't reshuffle those 4 Pigsies back in my deck. And it's also changed on how they did the card. Now it does a 125 heal initial, and it does a higher hot depending on the tier. So if you have tier 5, it's going to do like 848 for 4 rounds, right? So when it comes to advanced combat, right, there's only certain situations where we actually have needed to use spells that are using Arch Mastery, but for life. Like for example, I did use it in the Jade Oni rematch. In certain rematches, they have viable usage, and now with down the line, we're gonna get more rematches, of course, depending on what the gear is, right? And players are going to want to do those, and for that fact that you can't use heals as much, and having, if this does not affect the power of the dartboard deck, then I don't have an issue with this. But if there is an actual limitation on how many Pixies you can have in your deck, like for example, you can only have 4 and you can't reshuffle those back in, we're gonna have an issue because the Darkmoor deck is just completely chalked. So now they're forcing players to actually use Arch Mastery as intended, which I do get. But when it comes to the heals, people are gonna have to actually pack more heals when it comes to using it in advanced combat, right? Whether it be challenge mode, because in challenge mode it is very useful to have a healer 100%, right? If you can do it without a healer, that's good too, but I think a healer just makes everything easier. Of course, you can off school as well, like if you want to be having like healing stats on other characters. For example, like Balance has outgoing pins, I believe Fire does, but I think Balance does it just as fine. But of course there are caps when it comes to outgoing. Whenever you're doing advanced combat, there's going to be caps when it comes to that. But still, if there's only 4 cards with Pigsy, I don't know how I feel about that, because they're also nerfing other spells that life has when it comes to healing. It's not just Pigsy. Let's move on to the next spell that life is actually getting nerfed about, right? Mainly for healing, right? We'll go into the other nerfs as well for life, but I want to talk about this one too. Regenerate is getting nerfed as well. You're limited on copies when it comes to this as well. Thankfully, Regenerate doesn't have Arch Mastery. If it did, I feel like this would be even more annoying. But from what it seems like, is there's spellman paths for Regenerate, and you are actually going to be able to farm this. Now, my issue is, yes, Regenerate it did get nerfed, right? Instead of the 510 initial heal, now in advanced combat it's a 175, right? And you're only allowed a certain amount of copies. From what it seems like, it's 4. And when it comes to that, 4 regenerates with the 175 heal, and the overtime is 1300, which is a big heal, but it depends when it comes to advanced combat, right? Advanced combat is not going to have as an initial heal when it comes to AoEs as much, because you can't really use unicorn. I mean, you can use cantrips, right? Rebirth is banned, of course. AoE heals in advanced combat is just completely gone. There's, when it comes to the raids, you're going to have to use outside cards like Whole Hog Heal in the Azteca raid. When it comes to the Dragon Spire raid, people just use healing cantrips, like the health ones, right? It's always just been in the strat if you need health. And plus, on top of that, before you get to nullity, there are health wisps, depending on your strat. Of course, there should be. So healing is not that much of an issue when it comes to that. But when it comes to advanced combat and challenge mode and rematches, etc., moving forward, it's going to be tough using those heals because you're kind of limited. You can't just go outside and be like, hey, go get that cantrip for me. You know, you can't really do that. So kind of concerned when it comes to that, right? Yes, you are getting an initial heal, but it's mainly for the overtime, right? And yeah, you're getting limitations on your copies, right? Of course, when it comes to the regular card, the top path is not getting affected. It's still going to be its big initial heal. The overtime is still going to be the same from when it comes to the top path. Just the initial heal is going to be changed. So they want to make it so overtime heals are more important than the initial heal. Yes, like Satyr and like some other heals exist to a certain extent, but I think they should revamp some cards. And the one I've always pointed out on stream, and I've asked devs regarding it, is Sprite Swarm. I believe by far Sprite Swarm needs to be changed. It just needs to be, right? Due to the fact that it is a cheap heal, right? It's literally the only usage I see with Sprite Swarm is getting conditions off for your spells, whether it be having a certain amount of hots, etc. Just having Sprite Swarm accessible for life is just so good, because the fact that you can use it to set up 2x conditions with other players. So like if I have a storm, for example, I can use Thundering Djinn, right? I can use other cards, right, that have the hot condition. I can use Inferno Oni, I believe it is. I think it is, but you can use those cards, and it's just makes it easier, right? If I don't care about the heal and I just want to use the condition, I feel like Sprite Swarm needs to be changed for that factor. And the argument behind of them not wanting to change it is because it's too difficult. Like, to me, it doesn't seem that hard to make a separate path, right? If you guys are doing this with Regenerate wasn't even touched, right? It didn't even have a path. If you were able to do it with Regenerate, you're able to do it with other cards that didn't even have a separate path. You can 100% make a separate path for Sprite Swarm, make it no PvP, or make it PvP applicable, so I can use it in advanced combat, and just lower the heal if you have to, right? Or make the overtime a little bit less too, right? You can even lower it to 2 rounds, right? But I want to be able to set up that condition. So if I do a Sprite Swarm into a Sprite Swarm, make it 2 rounds, sure, but it's only useful if you do it back to back, right? Yeah, it's costing a turn, but you're costing it so you can set up other players' conditions, which I think is very good. At the moment, players are saying, well, we can just use the cantrip, whatever. But using a cantrip versus having access to the spell, I feel like it's a completely different situation. I shouldn't have to, or even just make a Sprite Swarm available in advanced combat, right? Because if I can at least use Sprite Swarm and then, you know, cantrip cast a Sprite Swarm, that's fine. But I really think that if that's going to be accessible, definitely update the animation so it's not one at a time. Let it do all 4 at once. Like, let it heal all 4 players at once, but an overtime heal. That would be awesome too. But I think that's the only way I feel like life should be played when it comes to advanced combat. I know these changes are mainly for PvP players because that's what they've been targeting for a while when it comes to these spell changes. It's not because it's OP and, you know, in regular PvE, because these changes are mainly meant for PvP players because of the fact that players do complain when it comes to certain strats. I know a lot of players have been complaining about life in PvP, like it's just unplayable, and that's where these nerfs have came out of sight. right? They've even nerfed Hungry Caterpillar, so the heal isn't as busted, right? When it comes to the actual card for regular PvE content, right? For just questing, whatever, it's still gonna be one shad, and you know, it's still gonna have the initial hit with the big heal. But when it comes to PvP, obviously now you can only use 2 pip shads in PvP, so it changes your card, and it's a 310 heal for 5 rounds. So it's not as, you know, rewarding as a life. I mean, yeah, you're doing the damage, but when it comes to the heal, it's not as busted as it was before. So they're really cracking down on life players, and they even nerfed Goat Monk, which I think they should have made 3 paths for Goat Monk, right? That's just my opinion. I think they should have had the damage path. It's good to have, right? I like the damage path. The previous healing path with the damage on it, they should have kept it, right? And just make it no PvP, and then have like a bottom path where it's just PvP only, which is lower the heal, still have the damage, whatever. But I think 100% they should have kept the other path, because for regular PvE, I see a lot of people that have Goat Monk or even crafted it and then farmed up some spellments to at least have tier 2 just so they can have the healing path. Is actually insane, because it's so good when it comes to, like, just as an example, just soloing. I know not many people solo as much when it comes to questing, right? There are like a handful of people who still do it, but like me, for example, I just did Skull Incendiate, don't even think about it. But when it comes to like actual solo fights that you have to do within the story or the quest line or whatever, or certain fights that you want to just solo, just having access to that, right, is just so good, right? So in my opinion, I think they should still bring back the previous version of Goat Monk, just mark it with no PvP, and just have this other variation that they added as a PvP only, right? That's just my opinion. So like I said, life is getting cracked up on. I know that they did change to Dark and Stormy. The Dark and Stormy top path is still going to remain the same, but they reduced the heal on the bottom path one, I believe. So heals are getting cracked up on, so people don't just compete with just hitting heals and make fights easier. So like I said, all this is just for PvP. I hope you guys understand that when it comes to PvE, it's a completely different scenario. In regular combat, it doesn't matter. You guys don't even have to worry about this. Don't even trip. But when it comes to advanced combat, like I said, like challenge mode, raids, rematches, those types of combat scenarios for the PvE players, will it affect it? It just comes down to, I think in my opinion, it does really affect challenge mode / rematches. But when it comes to raids, I don't think, not that much. But I because, you know, when it comes to the Azteca raid, you have whole hog heal. When it comes to Dragonspire, you have your own separate stuff. So I think it's fine for raids, but when it comes to challenge mode, advanced, that type of thing, rematches, I think it's gonna hit a little bit different, because yeah, you're not gonna be able to do those Dark Mark decks, strats where you just, you know, pack a half card or half deck of just heals and just pull for Pigy by like round 2 and you're fine, because that does not work anymore. So eventually I will revisit some of these rematches and just do something different instead of that, but they're really crushing down on that as well. Which is, I mean, this is the only issue when it comes to advanced combat and PvP. Changes, whatever happens for PvP, it does affect advanced combat, and it, even though they're not considered the same thing, right, I still have some things where, like, dude, just have a separate path for like advanced combat and a separate path for PvP, 100%. And I don't think players would be mad about that. If we're gonna go this spellment route for the long time, we should 100% have 3 separate paths at most. One for regular PvE, which is just, you can mark it down as you know, PvP banned, whatever. Have a separate path for advanced combat, have a separate path for PvP, because damn, I'm low-key kind of tired of this. Eventually we'll get like a different one. I don't know. I'm praying that we do at one point. I think it'll just make the player base a little bit more happy, because being factored that we have to deal with PvP changes in advanced combat, I don't know. It just, to me, it just doesn't seem right. Another thing I should probably clarify on is where to get the regenerate spellements. Is going to be in Beast Moon, which has its own separate issue. Because I don't think it should be tossed in Beast Moon, if I had to say so. I think it should be tossed somewhere else. I hate having to do Beast Moon, really. like, I don't mind Beast Moon, right? I'll play it time to time. I'll only do the PvE one because I don't like the PvP one. Like, if someone wants me to play the PvP one, I'll play it, whatever. But when it comes to the PvE one, I do it time to time, but not really, right? Not really. I'm not super into it, but I hate having to do it just for these spellements, right? I 100% think that that system needs to be changed or add a pack or something, right? Like, I don't want to be forced to be playing a type of game mode just for from spellements, right? Like, there should be another way of getting these. 100%. I don't want to do this side content at all. Like, let me do something else, like instead of Beast Moon. I really don't want to do Beast Moon. But that's just my take on that. I think players will probably have their own separate take of not wanting to do Beast Moon, or they'll probably enjoy it, right? All the Beast Moon players are probably like, well, there's another spell that they have to farm. Same thing as the AoE spell elements, right? That are in Beast Moon. I don't think that they should be there. I'll probably save that for another video, talking a little bit more about that. But that is my opinion on these spells for life and how it's going to be changed for the near future, including the storm spell, of course. Talked a little bit about it, but those are all the changes that are coming to life. Am I happy? It's like iffy. Even though I'm not a life main, I do main like other schools. Like, I've been on my, I feel like I don't even really have a main at this point, because I play depending on what I need to do, whether it be Scald Incendiate, whether I need to hop on a balance and do PvP time to time. Not really, but time to time, or anything else. I don't really do PvP, but when it comes to advanced combat, I do have my own take on this. And yeah, so hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe, all that type of stuff, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out, guys.